As a disclaimer, some of our episodes discuss topics that may not be fit for a younger audience. Some episodes also contain some swearing. This show was produced by the Geek Happy Network, creators of the very best in audible Oracle entertainment. If you enjoy listening to Represented, remember to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And so that was the first time, to the best of my recollection, I can, fully remember different things, or actually coming after the 2 years.
Yeah. And so when your mom she went to school,
Yeah.
you said, and then what happened?
So when she went to school,
Yeah.
they told her, "Oh, Maria, we've never seen this reaction from Maria. She's just always a very quiet, very smiley girl. We've never seen her being so aggressive." And I was like, "You see, the thing is, we have been coming to school for the last 3 years, completely and so right now, you see most of the time by her aggression
Then the bullying.
than the fact that I have to pay and her father has to pay. And even I have to pay."
Hello and welcome to the Represented podcast. I'm your host Nyx, and back again with another special episode. I feel like I've said every episode has been special at this point, but it is still special because I have another friend in the building. Hello to our viewers, by the way.
Hi.
I'd like to welcome to the studio Maria.
Thank you.
Would you like to tell us your full names, all of them?
So my full name is actually Maria Goretti Boke Mwita.
All right.
Yes.
That's
so
another conversation already.
it is.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But Maria is a relatively new friend to me, I think,
Yes.
but it doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't. Yeah.
And I think just the fact that we've always seen each other around, like Vancouver in general, hang out with similar people.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so I guess this was like something that brewed during the summer.
Yeah.
And so welcome to the Represented podcast.
Thank you.
How are
Thank
you
so much.
today?
I'm good today.
Yeah. There's so many places all these conversations can go.
Yes.
This podcast is generally about just exploring people's life journeys and just like whatever is on your mind, whatever you're passionate about, whatever it is you've been thinking about lately. I just like to just sit down and pick people's brains. Wherever it goes is where it goes.
Yeah. That's exciting though.
Yeah.
There's nothing, clear cut. You're just
For sure.
going out.
Yeah. What do you do right now?
So right now I am in between the end of my undergrad and I'm joining grad school.
Okay.
So there's some pre-classes that I have to take.
What
And
are you
also-
taking?
So I'm still continuing with math, but at the same time I'm still not certain.
Math. She
Yeah.
said math. I thought I said math. What the hell, yo?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
How
see-
does one major in math?
You know,
Why?
so funny story. When I was younger, I was always terrible at mathematics. That subject where I have all A's and everything, and then an F in math, right? And it's just one of those things where I think even my family had accepted Maria will always be an artistic student. The mathematics will not be her stronghold. But that is something my father never accepted, right? Because he felt like I had a bad experience with the teacher, which is true.
That's
I
so
had a
huge
ve-
with
Yeah,
math.
especially when you're young. It's such a defining thing. And I had a very bad experience with the teacher, and it changed my perspectives completely, right? So fast forward high school. So I attended, in my life I have attended around 17 schools.
Wow.
In
What-
different countries.
What was the first school you attended and where was it?
So the first school I attended was in Nairobi. It was Makini. So I was born in Nairobi
Okay.
West Hospital.
Okay.
Shout out to
to-
those guys in Nairobi West.
Yeah.
And then at the time, my parents were living in, not Imaradaima, but shortly after I was born, we moved to Langata, Southlands.
LA.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And then, I was brought up there, so on and so forth. And the first school I attended was Makini,
Okay.
actually.
Nice.
And then Makini wasn't a great fit for me. I moved to St. Hannah's, but that was still...
Why wasn't it a good fit?
I don't know. At the time, I was a child, so I can't really tell you. But my dad always felt that, maybe a certain school that would challenge me more academically would be better. So that was... It was... I personally didn't know the difference. So for them, it was just like where it's closer to home and where there's transport. And then, those things that really, especially when you're a child,
just
your
logistics.
parents are very particular about those things. Yeah. And then I moved to St. Hannah's. That was my first school. But I ended up again moving back into Makini. Okay. When I was, I think, in class 1, class 2. And then at the same time having problems with, math and so on and so forth. And it was very uncomfortable, especially you're sitting in a class where everybody seems to get it besides you. Yeah.
I feel like that's majority of the struggles. Yeah. With math especially, it's like the shyness that you didn't get the answer kills you way more than wanting to know the answer. And
when you're young, what that does is that it withdraws you. Because when you're chasing joy, the one thing that makes you feel hurt is not something you want to tackle.
You avoid it completely.
You're like, okay, that story is over. So
you have me thinking like I might have a career in math now. Because I'll be like, for me, like math was a battle at home. Since standard 3, I remember the first... When I knew math was gonna be a vlog, my mom had to write notes to school, like, yo, help this dude. The teacher is writing back, and it's like, and then what made it worse was my dad is an architect, and for him, math is like, so learning from him was always hell. And it was like, yo, dog, I can't do this. Exactly. And so then those bad negative feelings about math started coming up. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, no shade to my dad or anything, but like, Kenyan dads or African dads can be rough when it comes to teaching you.
So for me, both my parents are bankers. So my mom worked in the bank for 20 years. My dad still works in the bank. He's going to almost 40 years in the bank, right? And so for him, growing up, his stronghold was mathematics. So much so that he thought he was going to be an engineer, right? So my father attended Nairobi school, and then he went to... Was it Starehe then Nairobi school, right? And then he was always very good at mathematics, and he would always tell us stories. Back then when the teachers were British. Same.
Exactly. I grew up with the same kind of dad. Because my dad, I think my dad went to Nairobi as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. When it was called something else, right?
Yeah.
The days when it was like Prince of this.
Those eras, and the teachers were British. And, my dad always say, Maria walked into class. So he came to school a little late one time. And then he came from the village. And then he got into class and, the class had no idea what the answer to the question was. Now, this guy from Kuria, Kuria is the border of Kenya and Tanzania, which is far.
So like your people are from Kuria. Yes. I know a lot of Kenyans out there also might not know who the Kuria people are. So you might want to give us a quick...
So the Kuria people, our tribe is bigger in Tanzania. Okay. But we have a population, like a 5-6 generations that came from Tanzania into the border of Kenya and Tanzania, right? And they settled there into what is almost stretches into Masai Mara, right? So the people who would know us best are people in the Kisumu region, Masai Mara, and then that's the Kurias, right? And then, but my dad is Kuria. My mom is not fully Kuria. My late grandfather, who died this summer, was half Masai, he's part Masai, part Kalenjin, part Kuria. Right? And then my grandmother is full Habesha. She's full Ethiopian. Oh, wow. From the Marsabit region at the top.
Jeez, you're like, I didn't know you're this much of a cocktail.
So whenever I explain it, somebody's like, you're the true Kenyan. I'm like, in many ways, yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's a mixture of a lot of things.
Yeah, so you're saying your dad...
Yes. So he joined Form 1, first day of school. He saw the question on the board and boom, he knew the answer. And the British teacher was like, thank God for Samuel. And that is something, if you meet my dad, he will tell you that story over and over. Like, Maria, she said, thank God for Samuel. And, he's proud of his, his mathematical skills, which are brilliant, I must say. So when he used to teach me mathematics, and again, bear in mind, I have a very rough time in school with these teachers. I come home, it's like some minutes to midnight. I have to wake up at 6 in the morning to go to school, arrive there at 7. My dad, the question is on page 460. My dad is like, Maria, but the concepts that require, you're required to go back to page 1. Let's open page 1.
Oh, God.
Like, my guy, how about no? Right? Let's not do that. You know what? It just occurred to me that I actually know how to do it. Let me just go and sleep. And he he always would encourage me, you need to improve your math skills, but then I always felt like it's a bothersome thing. And the one thing that I loved about my parents growing up, again, one thing I experienced also during that time I was having a rough time with school was bullying. I was bullied for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I transferred schools a lot, again, because we used to move regionally and then internationally.
Okay.
Right? And
why internationally?
Because my dad's job, so he worked for Barclays for 30 years.
Okay.
Barclays, yeah.
So what could take him out?
Exactly. So we would move within Kenya. So I lived in Nairobi, we lived in Eldoret, we lived in Mombasa. I was brought up in Mombasa, in Diani.
Yeah.
When I was a child.
You know what's funny? Someone could at least me, let me say me, I could have, if someone asked me to guess, I would have said you're Swahili. I don't know, you have like a coastal vibe about you. Yeah.
You know, it comes from the Tanzanian aspect of my family, right?
Sense,
so the Swahili for us is a huge thing. Yeah, so that's why even sometimes when I meet people from Mombasa, they're like, are you sure you weren't born around here? Like, I have lived in Diani though, in coast of Kenya.
Nice.
And so we moved regionally, and also we started around, one of the reasons why we also moved was because, you know, sometimes some schools were not suitable. When you're doing class 8, you know, you want to be in that proper school that makes sure that you get proper. So I took the KCPA, right? But in that duration, I was actually, Adam and I used to be the same class.
Oh,
that's why we always,
in which school? In Riara?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Shout out to Adam. Adam was on, I think, the 3rd or the 2nd episode of this podcast, and childhood friend of mine. Lives in Vancouver now, but yeah,
so Adam and I were actually in the same class, but Adam used to be quiet back then.
Still
actually
is.
both were. Both of us were, honestly, because it used to be a very rough group of kids, right? And so I feel like that experience of being bullied, it literally shifted my life completely up until today, right? So
what were kids bullying you about?
The most ridiculous of things. It's actually pretty dumb to speak of. So first thing, I had always struggled with weight as a child. And you know, it's one of those things where you're transitioning in from childhood into adulthood, so the pimples are coming in, the weight is coming in, your body as a woman is also trying to formulate itself, like where does this go, where does that go, where does this go? And so that's one thing. And then at the same time, so around the time my dad was you know, there are certain cars that used to come out in Kenya. The first people you would see it with were ministers, right? So the Prado, you know, those beige Prados, those big ones. The only other person who had that car besides a particular minister was my dad at the time when they came out. And the only reason was because banks used to buy them for their staff members of a certain caliber, right? So my dad is one of that old people in the bank. So they would get him that car, right? And you would be surprised how difficult that car made my life.
Really?
Yeah.
How?
Everybody was like, you know, of course, my teacher, I used to have a math teacher, the same math teacher I'm telling you who gave me a hard time. Oh, Maria, don't think just because you're failing the math class, you're going to inherit your father's money. Oh, Maria.
That's
and then, this is the worst part. And I'm like, now who's talking about? Because that car to me was nothing. So for me, it's how am I going to get my homework done, not the car I am inside. It never occurred to me. There were some days when my mom's car was not working. We would come to school in a really old, like, rundown. That thing could have been like the Flintstones for all we know. So those you know, those Flintstones, you could be jogging on surrounded by metal. But for me, it wasn't a thing. You know, it was one of those things. And it used to confuse these kids. One day you're coming in a flashy car, the next day you're coming in somewhere so it's just like. But nevertheless, the teacher still used it against me. And the worst part was, it was hurtful, but I didn't understand.
Why? Yeah. First of all, it's like, why?
How is it an issue? And then, so what he would do sometimes was that the whole class hasn't done, they're not sure, he's not sure whether the class has done their homework or not. A class of 30, 40 people, he doesn't know. But Maria Boke, have you done your homework?
Yeah.
And so much so that the kids would put
on
pressure on me. But make sure you've done your homework.
Oh my God.
It's one of those things when you think back, it's, you almost feel, I felt responsible. But I didn't understand why did I feel responsible like that, right? So the teachers were in one way bullying me, and also the students were in one way bullying me. So much so that this particular teacher, when my dad came to pick me, now another thing that these kids used to give me a rough time for, if you are in the KCPE system, you would come to school on Saturdays. So Riara was one of those schools where we came to school on Saturdays. The only time we didn't come to school was on public holiday and Sundays, right? So Saturday we'd be in school from 9 to 4. And so actually 10 to 4. And lunchtime on Saturdays, given that my whole family is at home, they would bring me lunch. to school, right? So typically these kids would go and eat at the dining area, right? And they would be given, I don't know, like, this school standard foods, but of course it wasn't great, but it was okay, right? So my parents are like, let's bring you lunch. Now that's also something
because they lived close, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We lived 15 minutes away. So even when I forgot my homework, my mom would still go get it from me, right? But so they would, come bring me pizzas. And back then pizzas were a thing.
It's like,
right?
Yeah, like you get pizza.
Exactly, right?
Cool,
Terrific Tuesdays. And
Yeah.
so they would come and they would bring me pizza. The school created a rule.
Oh, damn.
No outside food.
You know what? Although I will say, like, it's weird.
I can understand it.
Yeah.
I can understand it.
But where the position you're in at that time,
Exactly.
it's like, can I have one thing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for me, it's when they made that rule, even my parents were like, it's good. It's fine. We would have exactly 1 hour break for lunch. They would come, the lunchtime was like at 1. My parents would come at 12:59. They were downstairs. The driver would go out.
Yeah.
They take me out for lunch. And that's also something that created tension for me with the kids and the teachers and the staff. It's just like, there is no way to fully, oppress this whole, kind of
this
favoritism. This special child.
Yeah.
Another thing that added onto it, I never used to go for school trips. My parents were, and still are, extremely protective, right? And so we went to Brackenhurst.
I love that place.
I went to Brackenhurst, and it was this last school trip before us KCPE candidates would do exams, and so it would be an entire year of like hectic academia, right? And so I went to Brackenhurst, and my parents, they're like, bye Maria, bye. I thought they went home. Yeah. They collected each other and then drove right behind the school to come follow me. But the only reason why they couldn't sleep in Brackenhurst, there was no room. Now drive back to Nairobi.
Okay, so like what I'm hearing from you is that on one hand, your parents were just kind of trying to be, like they were giving you opportunities to have nice things in the least unfair way. Yeah. But at the same time, with this trip example, that sounds like it's a bit overbearing. Where was the balance?
So for me, the thing is, at the time there was no balance. Yeah, and I'll tell you, and it's right now you see more of a balance because I'm grown and I am living away, and there's that, okay, we hope you make the right decision kind of thing. But at the time, it was their way of showing love. So sometimes I'm sure they didn't know when they were going above and beyond, right? But nevertheless, I never really, stopped them because what I lacked in school, the kindness, and I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for special treatment. The last thing I would ask for is that. But that simple kindness, and on even just not even kindness, then leave me alone, right? Even that is not
at
there.
the very least. Yeah.
At the very least, then leave me alone. And if that's not even there, so you're on the receiving end of all sorts of hostility. Exactly. My parents were like, we will make up for it at home. Yeah.
Right? And there was no attempt for your folks to like talk to the school about it?
They did it so many times. Yeah. So many times. And my dad, and they feared calling my father to school because my father would show up there and put them on full blast. Like
that probably didn't help
it
your
did not
situation.
Exactly. It didn't. So that's why I also sometimes used to stop him. I'm like, listen, these people, because he's defending me as his daughter, right? Because Maria does not misbehave. Maria does not get into fights. Maria does not do anything wrong. You would never catch me in any situation. But then there was this one time, and there's always that one time.
Always, there's always.
These kids did something, and it was a collective hostility. Like the entire class actually got together to just bully me. There was that unity, and so I cried the whole evening. Even in class I couldn't focus. I was just crying. Even teachers came in. All the teachers and the entire staff came in to tell off the whole class. How dare they do that? Single-handedly just harass me like that. And then I kept crying I couldn't even help myself. I went downstairs to the car, it was time to go home, and I kept crying, and my sister is now crying because she's seeing me crying. Then my dad starts getting stressed out and he's like, I told him, listen, there is no one in school, let's just go home. The truth is there was someone in school. He could have, blasted someone, but he was like, whatever. We went home. Now I remember that day because my mom was making ugali.
Shout out to ugali.
And she held the stick on her waist, and she was like, Maria, I'm surprised up until this point, my dear, you are not in juvie, because I would have beaten up those kids. Now that was a confidence that I had never received from anyone. Somebody to tell me it's okay, you can retaliate. It's okay to retaliate. because after taking it in for 3 years, the last year, and it was that year where they're writing for you recommendations. Oh, Maria is a good blah, 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 blah. She can go to
Form
this.
one
Exactly.
And all that stuff.
And it was such an imperative time. You can't really mess up.
Exactly.
So,
it's that transition to high school.
Exactly.
Like, you need
so
a good high school.
If you have a bad report, which high school wants to take you? No one, right? So I was really trying my best to hold it in for that last lap. The next day I go to school. So we are emptying our desks, right? We are about to do KCPE and everything. We're emptying our desks. This kid made a comment that, he called me the B word, right? And so it's one of those things where I was always like, it's not like a big deal. They've said worse, they've done worse. But this time I was almost waiting for someone to provoke me so that I can literally discipline them. And so I did. So we got into a huge fight, physical fight. Right? And so it became a big deal. The teachers threatened to call my parents. I'll call them. In fact, this is their number. Call them.
Wow.
And African schools, when the teacher threatens to call your parents, you're freaking out.
Yeah.
You're not like, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm dead today. But this time I was like, in fact, my mother has been waiting for your call them.
Wow.
And they were shocked. They were like, how, And so, funny thing is, they gave me a great recommendation. They still told me, oh, Maria, it's well done. Blah, blah. I didn't really care for the recommendation because in high school, I wasn't even in Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just like, those things don't matter to me. And then at the same time, it was one of those things where my dad was like, we're proud of you. You have taken a stand. And in life in general, when somebody attacks you, you don't wait until your spirit is dead. And then you will end up doing something crazy. You attack the situation as is, right? And so that was the first time, to the best of my recollection, I can, fully remember defending myself or actually coming into my own after the bullying experience.
And so when your mom she went to school,
you
said, and then what happened?
So when she went to school, they told her, oh, Maria, we've never seen this reaction from Maria. She's just always a very quiet, very smiley girl. We've never seen her being so aggressive. My mom was like, you see, the thing is, we have been coming to school for the last 3 years complaining that Maria is being bullied, you did nothing. Right? And so right now, the girl has taken a stance. She's not going to tolerate, the bullying. You seem more surprised by her aggression
than the bullying,
than the fact that I have complained and her father has complained over 3, and even I have complained to the teachers.
You get what made you stay? The school was that good that
it wasn't good.
Yeah, that you stayed for 3 years.
Yes. So you see, the thing is, it's one of those things where when you're about to do the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education,
you don't want to move around.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Exactly. It's one of those things where you're like, listen, it's like being in your last year of university and you're like, let me shift here. It doesn't make sense, And so it was like, I just decided to tolerate it. And it's like, I've taken it in for the last few years, I'll take it in, But going back home to my parents and, to my family has always made it very easy for me to exist in a very difficult world. Right? Their love and affection has carried me through the most difficult, most ridiculous of moments. And it gives me a lot of confidence. Yeah.
You did, like, during those times, like that 3 years, there was no one at all that you could confide in as far as your peers? Like, there was not even a single, Adam, where were you?
Adam was quiet. Back those days, he used to be at the back. I remember even where Adam used to sit. He used to sit one row away from the teacher at the back. And I used to sit at the corner, at the front over there. And you see, the thing is, I can understand even, for example, let's say Adam wouldn't want to associate
going
with
against
me.
the kid
exactly.
And all the kids.
You go against the grain, you'll be,
you're
so you're being friends with her. Things like that. But I would have one or two girls, but even then, they understood that my value in that class was not very high. So if they felt the need to mishandle me in order to make themselves feel better, they could do it without consequence. I wasn't going to retaliate because they're the only friends that I have. And at the same time, they would not be punished by their peers because their peers already contribute to my misery. Right? So it was a lose-lose situation for me in short.
Damn. And so, like, once you did KCP, how did you do in KCP?
I did great. I got like 3 A's and 2 B's and a C. So for somebody who was being like, actually, my dad was so impressed. My parents were very happy.
The fact that you're able to even study, like, I don't think, but I guess it made you stronger.
It
did,
what I mean? But it's not a strength that I would choose if I had to go back.
Exactly. It's not a strength that you even, like, a child should have to think about having.
No.
Like, ideally, no child should have to go through that.
Exactly. And at the same time, I never thought I had anxiety, and that was the birth of my anxiety.
Social anxiety. Let's talk about that, because like, I know for me, mine was not that extreme in terms of, but identifying the fact that I have anxiety to a degree about certain things, and realizing that the way certain things happened in school and at home as a kid, like, it matters. Like, when you talk about other people having problems and them getting anxiety, it makes sense.
Yeah.
When you think of yourself, you're like, nah, there's no way like that's made me have anxiety. This must be something else. Yeah. But it's like, so when you moved to high school, so now you're moving. Which country did you say you moved to?
So what happened was that when I first finished in Riara, I spent a year in Kenya. So we didn't know we were going to move to the Middle East, right?
Okay.
To Dubai, actually.
Okay.
So I did a semester at Nairobi Jeffries Academy. And then I did another semester at Loreto Convent, Msongari.
Okay.
But I had been from third grade, fourth grade, I was already in Msongari when I was much, much younger, right? But then I moved back for a semester in high school. And then after the last year ended, my dad got a transfer to Dubai. And that's when I moved. So I ended up repeating a year in high school because it's like, moving into the middle of the year, it was kind of tricky.
Yeah.
And in any case, I was within age range where they're like, just go back a year.
Okay. Was this your first trip out of the country?
No.
In life? No.
So when when I was in primary school, 7th grade, we went to the UK for 4 months. And so, of course, again, another aspect of the bullying was that when I went to the UK, we came back, right? And my parents had communicated this to my teachers, and they were like, Maria will be homeschooled. I will homeschool her. So my mom actually homeschooled me. But then when I came back, they're like, are you sure you went to Ushago? You didn't go to Ushago? Are you sure you didn't? Yes. And it was just one of those.
Village.
Yeah, to the village. Are you sure you didn't go to the village for 4 months? But we actually were there. we had lived in the UK for a year. Because my dad being away from us for 4 months was unacceptable. As a family, we're a very close, tight unit. And so he was like, you know what, 4 months, doesn't matter, pack your things, we're all going. And so, so we went for those 4 months, but I never really associated with the greater English community, right? So it was just my relatives that lived there, my aunt on my paternal side and her husband and the kids and everything, right? And because I felt like I always had my parents and my siblings, that's as much as interesting or as, as big my social circle got. And I had one best friend called Michelle. And I still have her, we've been friends for like over 20 years now.
That's awesome.
That was the second time. I was more aware, I was more grown, right? And so with the social anxiety, it made me more stressed. Now, when I went to Nairobi Jeffries, that was also a very new community. Like if you move from, those
like an Indian, it's more of like,
it's a Muslim school.
Yeah,
so we had the mosques and everything and so on and so forth. And it was a wonderful experience because I got to see, because I always attended either a Christian school or a Catholic school, because I'm Catholic, right? So, but to be in a school where it's a different denomination was also a great experience. And so I attended Nairobi Jeffries, and then there was this one time this kid did something that it wasn't a big deal, right? I think we were busted with phones or something like that. But the truth is, I had my phone, but mine didn't go off. It was her phone that went off.
Damn.
So the teacher was surveying the kids, like whose phone went off. The truth is, it was hers, not mine. But she tried to force me to accept that it was mine so that the teacher can have. But then the situation felt familiar. The harassment felt familiar, right? And I was like, you know what, Maria, the easiest way is for you to admit they take your phone. Mommy comes in the evening, she'll take it back from them. But there was something like, no, we are not going to accept it. I lost my mind more than I should have, right? I became, I went into a fit of rage, and it was, my reaction it was not as exactly. So even the kids were shocked, like they're like, whoa, Maria, we didn't see that coming. It was just something so small, even trying to explain themselves.
Were you like, you shouted at the kid?
I shouted, I threatened, I banged chairs and tables and everything, but it was just because I thought of how I was treated back then, and
so
I
familiar.
swore, those 3 months before you join high school after KCPE, that was my swearing stage. I swear that will not happen to me again, right? And so I went back home and I was like, I need to find a sustainable way to deal with conflict. That's something till today I struggle with. Wow. As much as I don't go into a fit of rage like I used to.
Yeah, it's totally the opposite.
Now for me it's more of like, when I realize that something's about to get very tense, and I normally sever ties. I block the person off. Like, you don't exist to me anymore. You could be dead for all I know. we don't associate. And so I did that up until I think a year and a half ago or a year. And so now I had to go back to my old relationships that I did that to find a sustainable, listen, conflict is normal. Confrontation is normal. Let's see how we can maneuver through this. Because of that experience. And that's why I told that bullying, it manifests itself in my life till today in different ways. So those are things I'm still trying to curb. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? When I got to high school, so of course, I managed to deal with the bullying one way or another, right? But then when I got to high school, my body just became what it became, right? I was just pear-shaped. There was no way around it. Yeah, exactly. But at the time, Kim Kardashian was not huge.
So it wasn't.
It was Paris Hilton. It was Nicole Kidman. Those
different
exactly,
generation,
right? Naomi Campbell,
Yeah.
And so when I was in Dubai, I attended a school called Jumeirah English Speaking School. And 4,000 British students, 3 Kenyan kids, of which 2 is my sister and I. Right? And so pressure. These kids look skinny. These kids, they have
European
this British
standards
eggs,
of beauty.
Exactly. My hair is kinky and I'm struggling to even find saloons, in this area. And the saloons in Dubai, you would have to go to the very sketchy side of Dubai, old Dubai, but very sketchy sides, to find a saloon, so you would have to drive away from the suburbia all the way there, and now when they see you with their car there, they charge you more because so it's a whole thing, and so you get there and, the kids are fascinated by you, and now I'm coercing myself to speak in a British accent, right? So during the first 3 periods of class, I'm like, oh, hello. Let me tell you, it got to break time. I think my brain forgot. What do you want? I want juice. And biscuits. And crisps. And they're like, oh my God, Maria, your accent is absolutely lovely. Which one? Which accent? Which one? The old one or the new one? And so that's one of the things I was like, you know what, let me just stick to what I know. And then I'll, we'll see how it goes. So it was good and everything, but I always was under a lot of pressure physically. So I started eating salads. I wasn't really eating, right? So I was eating salads. I would go home. I would stop eating by 4 p.m. Then the whole night I would just work and everything. And it was very unhealthy, right? Very, very unhealthy. And I did every diet in the book. And also at the same time, my skin was not helping, right? You know, when you're a child, you have that problematic skin. I hadn't figured out what's wrong with me and ABCD. But that's what resulted in me spending a lot of time indoors. I never have to worry about, people and so on and so forth. I would go to school, I would get my grades, I would be a nice person. I had that one friend, and I remember her name was Olivia, So, so that carried me through my time there, right? And after that, my parents decided, let's buy a house. We're like, let's buy a house. So they bought a house at the outskirts of Dubai. A nice place, big pool, ABCD. So they're like, you can spend as much time as you want indoors. At least you have the comfort of your home. And so they were like, but the only problem was the bus that would take me to Jumeirah English Speaking School was no longer coming to the outskirts of Dubai. I would have to go to a nearby school. So I went to a school called Nibras International School. So my mom was actually very happy because she was like, it's an American curriculum, Maria, it's a much tougher system than the IB. I don't know why my family believed that.
But the IB?
Yeah,
tough,
exactly. So, when Michael did IB, that's when he realized, Michael, my brother, that's when he realized IB was actually tougher than AP.
Then uni level work,
Exactly. And so that's why we're like, okay, you know what, we must have gotten that wrong then. And then I get the school. So at the back of my head, as a rule of thumb, before you join a school, go visit it. So we're just one of those people. We went online, filling out applications, paid everything. But did you go to see the school? No. So I show up the school. It's an American school. The demographic is 95% Arab. From different parts of the Gulf and different parts of North Africa, right? So that really didn't bother me because I felt like, unlike this British school that I was in where there were very many Europeans, there was the cultural similarity. And I wasn't bullied at the British school. They were nice, others were pretentiously nice, but for whatever reason, it worked for me. It sufficed.
At least they left you alone.
Exactly, and that was wonderful. And so I went to the Arab school, and first day of school, hostility, right? There were 2 black people in that school, in that class, of which I was one of them. And the other one was a Sudanese guy. And so the Sudanese guy was from Northern Sudan. Of course, he was in South Sudan. And so, you know, with North Sudan, their culture is very similar to the Arab culture, right? They also speak Arabic and so on and so forth. And immediately I felt like an outcast. And the other 2, and the other kids who are different, there was one who was from South Korea, and there's one who was from Japan. Actually, she was half Japanese, half Pakistani. Very interesting mix.
They had their own little...
Exactly thing. So they were also very quiet. So I decided, let me just kind of pledge my allegiance to you guys. You know, you when you go to school, you try and find a circle just so, you know.
Just to exist.
Exactly. In that space. And that's what I did. But oddly enough, with high school, my confidence levels were much higher.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those things where I didn't care if I were alone. It didn't bother me. I had already selected parts of the school where I was like, chill, you know. And if you come at me, rest assured, I will come at you. Right? And so that, because I noticed the hostility from day one, that's when I made my decision. Like,
quick.
Yeah, just like, you know what, this one is going to be difficult and I will have to discipline this situation. Right?
Question. Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Like, how much of that has manifested into something that's not serving you? Because I feel like you said, it's so quick to be like shut down, you know? But like, other times you feel like maybe, I guess you did mention some of your relationships you revisited to fix that.
Yes.
Okay. So it's like a balancing act.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and the reason why is because when somebody, I wouldn't want to say misbehave, but because you never know what propels somebody to behave a particular way. But when somebody shows any level of hostility towards me, my, Pavlovian response is, you know what, I am going to do this to you, and I am going to put you in your place. You will know your place in my life, right? Either you're non-existent or you will exist within certain limits. But when I came to college, and this is something I have learned in the last year or so, we have to speak it out, right? I need to understand where you're coming from with the way you're behaving. And if I still notice that you're still being, difficult and so on and so forth, like, listen, this relationship is not by force, so we could just cut it off, right? But back then, that wasn't, my resolution. And then at the same time, my sister was a year below me, so she was in a class opposite me. And then down the hallway was another Kalenjin girl, Betty.
Oh, Kalenjin is a tribe in Kenya.
Yes, exactly. And so we were like the Powerpuff Girls, the 3 black Powerpuff Girls, and people hated us. We were literally like a handful of black students in that school, of which we were non-Arab, So my sister, myself, and Betty we were very tough personalities. Like, sometimes those kids would try and really like mess with us, and we would really retaliate. So it's almost like you are a minority in this school. What gives you the right to retaliate to that degree? We used to get very aggressive, particularly Betty, because Betty had lived in Dubai much longer than I did, right? So she was older than myself and Naomi, my sister. So she would defend us, right? And at the same time, she spoke Arabic. So I realized, they would say certain things in Arabic, or sometimes what would happen is that we would, even in English class, they would speak in Arabic, surely, And so what for me was like, I need to learn this language so that anytime we go and report something to the teacher and they're speaking in Arabic, even I know what they're saying. Now, much to my surprise, I realized Swahili, the Kenyan language, is 45% Arabic. Now, picking up on the language was very easy for me. I had an Egyptian friend who we fell out much later on, but she taught me how to write, she taught me how to read, she taught me how to speak, everything I needed to learn. I can't speak Arabic. I'm intermediate, of course, but the longer I've lived away from there, I don't.
You already know what I'm about to ask. Can you give us give us a line or two?
Okay, so for example, you can say, welcome to Vancouver. So, ahlan sahlan.
Okay.
Ana esmek Maria. So, like, just those small things,
That's cool, man. I've never met a Kenyan who knows Arabic. I mean, a non-Muslim Kenyan that speaks Arabic. Yeah.
So then there are different dialects to it. So she was Egyptian. So she taught me the Egyptian dialects. So they would say things like, for example, how to say a car in Egyptian Arabic would be different than how to say a car in, like the Arabic that's spoken in the Gulf. So they would say Arabia and they would say something else on the other side. And so she taught me all those differences. And so back then, given that you're hearing it being spoken a lot, you pick up on it, right? So when they would go and say, oh, Maria, so on and so forth, also me, I would go there with my Arabic broken. It's broken.
Yeah, but it works.
It works. Yeah. It's good enough for me to get my point across. And everything, we would go back and forth. And then, but the kids were like, you cannot put her down. Yeah. Exactly. So much so in the hallway, they would see me coming. Yeah. They clear. Let me tell you, those things and they fed into something else. That's a problem again, right? They fed into a certain power that started to grow inside of me. That. Yeah. It was like the fact that these kids cleared the hallway when they see me coming in was like, now I'm that kid, and I excused that because I'm like, I was the one who used to be stepped on back then, but now I deserve this kind of... So that fizzled out because I didn't like entertaining it. And, my sister is very, she gives great advice.
She kept you accountable?
Exactly.
How did you... take me back to that moment where she snapped you back into like, you're drunk off of this power.
So it was a conversation that I think I must have been having with my mom. I was like in the car and I'm talking like, Mommy, nowadays people fear me. Oh. Now he's like, Maria, be careful. Pride counts before a fall. Yeah. You don't want to gain that level of pride from, of course, I used to kind of frustrate these kids to a certain degree because, and just to keep them at bay.
Yeah,
One of those things where when you say something, I really roar at you.
The thing is, like, with kids, like, it's just pure survival.
Yes.
It's not,
and
there's no
intent.
intent.
Exactly. Yeah. Primary school, high school was purely survival, and it's something I never really understood, And so I had to, like, be hostile towards them just to keep them at bay.
Yeah.
So, you just don't mess with
You
me.
don't want to do it, but you kind of have to.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And, that was high school, and it was fine. And then after Nebraska, I moved to another American school. I did 1 year. So they make you pay a fee for a whole year because they know in case you have to... At after, you're not going, my dad was like, you're not going to leave my money. Finish it.
Wow.
So I was like, after this year, and the one thing my parents gave me after the bullying experience was the privilege to choose schools. They were just like, just get us the fee structure, get us, the information that we need, but you can go to whichever school you want to go. You choose, because your well-being is important. So I attended another school called K-12 International Academy, right? And at K-12, it was a very good school. It was a virtual school, right?
Oh, okay.
Yes, so I used to, they email you boxes of books and experiments and everything all the way from the States, actually Virginia, and then it comes to your house, or there comes the K-12 Center in Dubai.
Yeah, I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, it's actually, it's like the new way kids are going to school now, like the digital age and everything.
Yeah, okay.
And so I'd be at home and I'm just Skyping with my teacher and, ABC, that's how I did and then the only problem was, and this is why I'm not excited for graduations, I never actually graduated high school. That whole cap and everything.
Yeah. And I guess, I never had that either, but there was a thing though. It was a thing. There was prom.
Exactly.
There was like
I never did
different
prom
ceremony.
Yeah. Yeah. I never attended any form of ceremonies in my academia life, right? Except probably my catechism and Holy Communion.
Holy Communion.
That was at the time for me. I was going to school at Loreto Convent in Songari. It only made sense, right? It's already a Catholic school, and my parents were like, attend catechism, which I was already doing. And so for me, having my Holy Communion was just one of those by the ways. Everybody was having it.
Yeah.
You know? And that was as exciting as ceremonious as my academic life got, right? And so I didn't actually do the whole Kappen thing in high school, but the perk was that Hillary Clinton got to sign our diploma. Let me tell you, that thing serves you. You apply anywhere and you just like, want to see my diploma. And that's when she was Secretary of State. And so, and then after that, I finished high school. And still, you make progress. That last year and a half I was doing virtual learning, it didn't help with my social skills because, again, I'm back home, the comfort of my family, and you let people into your space, and this is your space. You control the variables, right? Most of the time, I didn't. And so we moved back to Kenya in end of 2012, actually mid-2012. And, we moved to Karen, and then my dad's gotten a new job, so he shifted from Barclays to Standard Chartered Bank. And then my siblings are back in school, and Naomi is finishing her last year of the virtual learning. And again, I'm not really associating with anyone family, strictly family. But then again, my family lives far away from Karen, right? So they live in, others who live in Langata, they're also busy. They can't keep showing up. There are others who live in South B and South C and so on and so forth. So they can't also keep showing up at, when I want people around. And then the big moment came. UBC. Now, I got accepted into U of T and UBC.
Okay.
But my dad was like, UBC is a better fit.
What was that? Why did you choose Canada in the first place?
In fact, oddly enough, Canada wasn't even an option for me. The plan was for the States, right? I applied to
because it was an American. You had come from an American.
AP, actually, and I did the SATs, and I did even SAT 1, SAT 2. I was priming myself for that American college life, right? But around that time, when we were shifting from Dubai to Nairobi, my dad's CEO at the bank, he has 6 daughters. I think 2 or 3 of his daughters attend UBC Okanagan. Okay. Right? And so when he mentioned, by the way, my daughter's just finished high school and she's looking into college. And then he recommended, he was like, Maria should try UBC. And then he just came home like, Maria, everybody seems to be talking, pretty well about Canada. Why don't you try it out? I always felt like Canada was one of, it's like the little brother who's not excited.
Yeah, it's like Pepsi.
Really,
it's
Canada?
Exactly. It's like the States the States is Coke
and then Canada is Pepsi.
Yeah.
I'm like, Canada, but it sounds like a farmland. That was, when I was ignorant, right?
Yeah,
so
I was too. Dude, I think the only thing I knew about Canada was Justin Bieber and
even
snow.
that I didn't know, but I knew the snow. Yeah. I always knew. People always talked about, like terrible Canadian weather. And so I decided, let me just try this UBC. And so it was around election time in Kenya. I decided, let me just apply and we see. So I got into both of them, U of T and UBC. And then at U of T, I got into the Woodward School of Economics or whatever that was, right? Directly. But at UBC, they would make me apply into the faculty. That changed the game for me. That's how I got into math. Okay. And so I came here and it was an interesting experience initially. First, when we've arrived, there was a Jumpstart program. Now, at Jumpstart, my parents have paid everything. They're like, okay, now go sleep in that dorm in Totten and everything. Yeah. I refused. Okay. It would get to evening, so they were sleeping at Marine Drive. I refused to leave my mom's bed. So my dad would have to walk all the way from Marine Drive to the other side of campus to sleep. And bear in mind, the guy had booked that room. Yeah, he's probably like, this kid.
What was you were just not trying to...
I was not ready. Yeah. Like that shift, moving from one town to another in your own country is one thing. But moving halfway across the world, I have no family. And that's how I moved to, Vancouver. With no one around me, literally. And my parents brought me, of course, they're trying to, help me.
Enculturate you slowly.
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's one of those things.
And how long did they stay before they went back?
They were here for 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
I didn't even come with clothes. They were like, you just leave everything. We'll just shop for you when you get there. And so they were trying to be very accommodating and trying to help me, enter the society, right? Good. So the first time I arrived, my mom called... Benna Peters. I'm not sure whether you know her name. Yeah, Benna Peters is a Ghanaian girl, and she's the first person she was in Jumpstart welcoming group. My mom called her to help me integrate and everything. And so she was so nice to me. Until today, I remember Benna like that, right? And after that, I've never really spoken to her because, she was much, much older. She ended up graduating and everything. But she was very, very kind to me, very kind. And my mom always remembers her for that reason. How's that, slim Ghanaian girl who helped you? And so when Benna helped me, I took my things, and then I went to my dorm, right? And so my parents said goodbye the next day, and they left. So it was now me trying to figure myself in Vancouver. I didn't show up to any of those Jumpstart things. Yeah, wow. I did not. And I was scared. I showed up 2 or 3, but those outside events, let's take you to Richmond Night Market, let's take you to this, none of them. Yeah. And one of the reasons was because, again, I went into the Jumpstart group itself, and then you could see the clicks for me. And then the trauma begins. Yeah, it's
so bad.
And
right?
even at 20, you're still
it's still there.
It's still eating you. Yeah. You can already see, and the way the kids organize themselves, the cool kids were on one side, the weirdos were on one side, the non-English speakers were on the other side, and now Maria, we are lost.
Where are you?
Where
do you exist?
Again. So you try and say something to the cool kids, literally, they'll look down upon you like, even it's almost that look where the fact that you even have the audacity to speak to us is problematic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that conversation died. Now I met 2 girls, Noemi Fernandez and Chanda Mahajan. So these are shout out to my girls, honestly. They made my undergrad very easy, very tolerable, And so we got together, and the 3 of us formed like another Powerpuff Girls, of minority Powerpuff Girls.
Hilarious. I've never heard of that
the
expression
minority
before.
Powerpuff.
I can already see it in my head right now. Like.
So that it was nice. But then we got together, we would go out and everything, and again, very supportive group of people, right? And so, but the problem was, we never had the same majors, and Chanda one of the girls left UBC, I think a year into schooling. She decided to do hospitality, but she was just within Vancouver, so we could always hang out. So now again, the problem, identity. Now, identity for me wasn't something that I thought of for a very long time. Right? I always knew that I was Maria, but I didn't know I was black and African, and Kenyan and Kuria and all these things. I knew I was Kuria when I was in Kenya, because how the tribalism is, But here, I never had to think of myself as Maria, the black girl. It never occurred to me. So even my associations to people it had that naivete to it.
Yeah, right? Because you're like, I mean, first, like, it's so weird, because like I always have this thing where it's always hard to kind of express this, because I don't want to sound like I'm putting racism on people.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's racism.
No.
I'm just saying, like, as that experience of encountering people from other cultures, especially as a black person, because visually it's like obvious you're not from. You can tell that, like, I don't know what to do with you.
Exactly.
Lion King. I don't like. It's like yeah.
And I realized they have to get over. People in general have to get over your blackness before they actually see you as a person. And there's a way. What I used to do is that I have to find a branch, something that will connect. Have you watched Avatar, where they remove those things of theirs and then they connect it to something to form a certain unity? Okay. So I had to find something that would connect me to them, or say, like, I really love sports car. Yeah, like, when I used to be in Dubai, we would go to Abu Dhabi for F1. Oh my gosh. It's and it's just like, okay, now I found connective tissue. Let's keep this going. Let's keep this alive. And it gets exhausting, because there's some people you have nothing in common. It's like, wow, so the weather today, though. Right?
Oh god, that's so many people.
That redundant conversation, that monotonous, annoying conversation about the weather. And so I decided, let me look for an African community, because identity was huge. And it hit me the first 2 weeks of school, right? How I need to find people who are similar to myself. So I joined the African Awareness Initiative, and it was a very good, it helped me psychologically, in the sense that there were people who looked like me in a space that no one looks like me.
Yeah.
All right. And even if, so I was predominantly, West Africa.
Yeah,
right?
that's another thing, right? That you didn't think of yourself as an East African.
Exactly.
It's like, what is being East African?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so much so that the December that I went home, I had so many West African tendencies, even how I spoke and how I cooked, until my mom was like, Maria, did we take you to Nigeria or did we take you to Vancouver? Like, what happened? And it's just like, I can't help it, because it's who I'm surrounded by. Now, trying to find my identity as a person, and also as a black person, and also as an African, those were layers I was just struggling through, right? Yeah. But the AAI was, was supportive, in the sense that at least I didn't have to think too much about my blackness when I was around them.
African Awareness Initiative.
Yeah. And so I vied for a position as VP Marketing, of which I got, and I, was assisting with the whole, marketing for their events and everything. And then shortly after, of course, I had friends, whom we were friends while we were doing AAI. And then we decided to move in together. Now, as a rule of thumb, I realized, do not move in with your friends. For some people, it goes for the better. In my case, it became for the worse. Right? And I feel like there was a particular friendship with a very lovely girl who I was, we were very good friends. We were almost like 2 sides of a coin. And unfortunately, we fell out so badly that I have... it was a heartbreak. You would think she was like a boyfriend or something. The heartbreak was so intense that, I stopped eating spicy food.
Whoa.
Yeah, because that was our thing.
Yeah.
Right? I stopped, listening to Sarkodie because that was our thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every time I listened to
but
Sarkodie,
it makes sense also because of where you were at that time.
And at the time I had no family, right? So she was my sister here. And everybody knew we were as tight can be, right? But we end up making up and everything, and she left Vancouver for better opportunities elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, so but it was fine later on. But it was one of those things where I also had to learn how to be myself. Now that's when the depression kicked in. Because what is that?
Yeah.
What's that space?
It's like, what? Oh my God, it's so weird that you described it that way.
Yeah.
Because like that's when depression kicks
exactly.
in. Yeah.
And the worst part was that time where I didn't have a sustainable way of dealing with things. I started cutting people off.
Yeah.
Now you start cutting people off, then you find yourself alone.
Yep.
You find yourself alone, and it's reading break, and you're alone, and you have nowhere to go. You've locked your doors. You're ordering Domino's day and night. It's just I picked up my phone and I called the suicide center.
Oh wow.
And it was. But whatever propelled me to do that, and the lady was talking, but I'm just like, the mental health is not a thing in Africa. It's just like one of those things where they just.
Yep.
Then later on, that part of me kicking, I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Switched off.
What is?
Yeah.
In Africa or in African culture or Kenyan culture in general, it's just like mental health. Canadians, mental health is not
a thing.
Like. It's like, dude, we don't care about how you feel.
No.
We don't care, like you having experience and it changes you. It's just you being soft.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're told to toughen up. You're told. There's that thing where Maria, if other people had the opportunities you had, they would have done more with it than you're currently doing with what you're busy complaining. You're being a softie. Everybody goes through a hard time, and hearing those things makes you start thinking that. There's actually something wrong with me. Yeah. Yep. Why am I being so soft? Why am I being this? And that was the beginning of my quote unquote suicidal thoughts. Because the very same way I'm quick to end it with people, I also wanted to end it with myself. Yeah. Again, it was a very interesting experience. And so school started. Thank God the coming year, my sister came. And I had to move off campus, which was good for me. That was, academically speaking, or even in any context, it was the best decision that I made for myself. Because sometimes being surrounded by friends your age who are going through the same things and they're exuding certain energies or certain, even their hostilities might not be a byproduct of them hating you.
It's what
they're going through. Yeah. But my sister is, she's my sister, right? Naomi has come from the comforts of home. She is here to me a pillar of that affection and confidence and so on and so forth that I experience at home. And as a person, she has a very strong personality. Naomi has always been a solo rider, a lone wolf. And that's where, that's who she is, right? And I always admire that about her. Like her, she can, in this world, you could all disappear and Naomi's alone herself and she doesn't care. And so living with her gave me confidence. When people would try and mishandle me, Naomi would be at the back, tell her this. And after me, I'm shouting over the phone, and I'm like, what do I say? And, she would not tolerate people bullying me. And she would always, coerce me to be aggressive and assertive, And that did something for me, right? And her lone wolf character also helped me be alone and be okay, right? And it was good. And so, again, another thing then living with family is that, when you're living with your parents and all your siblings, the dynamics are different because the authority are your parents. But now when you're living with your siblings and the authority is no longer there, like presently with you.
Yeah, there's no structure.
Exactly. Yeah. Now you have to form your own relationship with that. Yeah. So we also had a bit of our back and forth, but then they have been very helpful in, building my character as a person. So after, going through school and everything, also relationships were not easy. Now.
Man, dating in Vancouver, talk about it.
Let me tell you. It's one of those things. So when we first arrived, I was not excited for dating at all because like I said, I had a lot of confidence issues, right? And so for me, it was almost like if somebody showed interest, you have an underlying interest over there. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you need to step back a little. But then I enjoyed being in a space where I could like someone, but there was no commitment. I could go back to my life, but I like you and I want us to have a thing.
But
not don't get too close. But you can't really form those kind of rules in a typical relationship, right? But then and I used to have, a bunch of crushes, but that's where it used to end. In my second year, I fell for someone, and I had that comfort of being, okay, this is my space, and then I will like you within this vicinity, and then when I go home, you're non-existent to me. And for 2 years, that was the case.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that I really enjoyed about that whole situation, right? And also what used to help was the fact that there was never a solid, fully solid understanding. Like, it's not one of those things but sometimes I would want more, and then sometimes I'm like, not really.
And that doesn't work in a relationship.
Exactly.
You can't have it like that.
You can't have it both ways, And so, and then, he ended up moving on and everything and so on and so forth, broke my heart and everything. But at the same time, I'm like, you are indecisive in that time. And I realized it's okay to be indecisive, to some degree, but just don't involve anyone.
Other people. That's the thing. Yeah.
I told myself, so long as you don't know what you want and you don't have that capacity, and sometimes I think about it, the way I live with my siblings, can I imagine myself living with somebody who's not my family to that extent and love them like and be like my husband and so on and so forth? The truth is no. That is the solid truth, right? And I feel like I'm not there yet. I have never been there. I am currently not there, and I'm not sure how long it'll take me to get there. But when I do, I will make it'll not be one of those, let's date for 10 years, then get married. No. Yeah. And this is how, so a lot of my friends got into relationships early into UBC. Like, you know how many bottles of wine I have carried and boxes of tissue because guys broke up, right? And I told them it's because at this age, discovering yourself is not easy. Yeah, figuring out what I like, what I don't like, how I even feel about, there was a time in my life you could harass me, you could even abuse me, and I still wouldn't know.
You didn't know, yeah.
I just like, maybe that's just their behavior. But and it happened even at UBC. Somebody, but the harassment I was receiving was not that overt one in your face where somebody's trying to slap you around. It's
emotional.
Exactly, it's that emotional, overwhelming me emotionally. But I didn't know, right? And then later on, you grow up and you're like, this person, you are not, you are not being a good friend to me. You are being, tasteless. And so, it's important you go through that on your own. Because my friends who went through it with their boyfriends, like 2 have managed to, break that, space, and now they're into that whole grown folk thing and they're getting married and everything. But majority
more often than not, it doesn't work out.
It does not.
It's like, what do you call it? Childhood sweethearts and all that. Like, there's only a handful of people who can have a childhood sweetheart.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people carry that childhood sweetheart mentality, where it's like childhood sweetheart, high school sweetheart, or like if it's not high school sweetheart, it's like university sweetheart, and everyone in uni. I remember like thinking about that, just like when you come to Vancouver, everyone has a boyfriend or girlfriend.
And that's the pressure came from there.
Man.
The pressure came from there because for also me, it was a very weird space to be in because it's like, I'm insecure. I don't want him. But everybody seems to have one. So where do I stand, And so, but at the same time, it's just like, I never had that type of, like I said, I had a lot of crushes.
Yeah,
and, a lot
but that wasn't your focus.
No, it's just a bunch of flings, those things that I felt that would boost my confidence here and there.
Yeah.
And I was just like, listen, I need to find a way to boost my own ego without somebody telling me, you're pretty and things like those, So, so that was it. And that also after the whole 2-year situation with that particular guy, I decided I need to control how I feel about these relationships, right? So my mom always told me, Maria, don't be in a hurry because you'll be married longer than you'll be unmarried. Right? Yeah.
That makes sense.
Exactly. She's always like, you'll be married longer than you'll be unmarried. So don't be in a rush per se, right? Because I've always felt like my mom, if there are things that she wanted to do with her life, but she never got to do it because, she single-handedly pulled a family of 12 out of poverty.
Yeah.
My mom is the third of 12 children, right? And so my grandfather was a warden in Kisumu, a prison warden. And my grandmother was just a regular housewife. She used to be a businesswoman to sell food and so on and so forth. but they never really used to make ends meet to fully, especially after my grandfather retired from Kisumu and they moved back to the village, you know, now to the Kuria region, right?
Yeah.
And so they had a hard time financially, so much so that my mom and her siblings would be sent to Marsabit so that their aunties could take care of them. So my mom got a job at Kenya Commercial Bank at the age of 18.
Wow.
Yeah, and she was, you know, she had finished college by then and so on and so forth, and so she started working. And back then in the 80s or early 80s, late 70s, if you make around 3,000 Kenya shillings a month, it's equivalent to like 300,000, which is equivalent to $3,000 today, right? That was a lot of money. Yeah, but she would send all the money back home. And so by that, she pretty much took all her siblings through college.
Wow.
All of them.
Wow.
And then in unity with my father, gave all of them jobs.
Wow.
So the poverty ended. That cycle of poverty where, you know, right now should be giving people money for no reason. No more. Everybody's in school. Everybody has an international job. They're all bankers and everything.
That's so cool.
Exactly. And so it's amazing, you know, her strength. Like, my father is extremely wise. I don't know anybody. God, then daddy. And then, but my mom, her strength is unparalleled. I have never seen anything like it. And so I take both their counsels very seriously. So when my mom always told me there are certain things I wish I had done at your age. I wish I traveled more. I wish I became a lawyer. She became a banker. She still enjoyed it and everything, 20 years. But then it was not out of choice. It was out of necessity. Right? It was necessary. She enjoyed it, yeah. But then she wished she made certain decisions where she made certain choices for herself. Yeah. Exactly. And at the same time, she couldn't live for herself when you hear 6 of your siblings are all, you know, admitted in hospital and they're all sick and everything. And so she can't even eat, right? Yeah. So she had to take money and, you know, and so on and so forth. Brilliant woman. And so she always encourages my sister and I to not to be in a hurry for relationships, not to be in a hurry for marriage or children and so on and so forth. Those are things that will come. But the reason why she emphasizes it is because we don't want to look at our children and be like, I wish I did this. Yeah. You stopped me from doing this. And ABC. She doesn't do that to us, but she's like, I'm not you. You might have that resentment towards your children. So live your life and exhaust it. You know, just be what you want to be. Have the power that you want to have, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Amazing. Exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you want to make sure that the people that come into your life after you are certain of who, at least not fully certain, because every day is a learning process, right? But at least you're solid about the key things that make you who you are. You will, you know, society has always taught us that you must come into my life to add value. Otherwise, if you're not adding value,
that's
out.
True.
But then, for me, you will come to my life and you will enjoy the value that I have added into myself. And this is why, and one of the reasons why I'm, you know, pretty sad if, you know, I decide to leave Vancouver. I'm leaving and I have found a group of people who I'm giving myself to, right? I'm enjoying a lot of time with my siblings right now, and I'm enjoying a lot of time with my friends, and especially our circle of friends and everything. And so, because I'm at that point where I have added value, a lot of value to myself. I have added a lot of worth and so many things, and now I'm giving it. And people are enjoying it, and we are enjoying each other, you know? And I would have to do it else. You're right? You know, and it's just joy upon joy upon joy. And so that's what I decided to do. I decided maybe I should give this whole relationship thing a break. But on the occasion that, you know, you're having a lonely thing, you're just like, you know, we'll have a small fling with somebody, and then we have an understanding that, you know, it's just probably, I call it high-intensive friendships. Intensive friendships. But it's not like we're going to graduate into, you know, those things. No. Yeah, and
it's interesting that, like, I just thought about something. The fact that you as a girl, as a Kenyan woman, making that decision, like, just culturally, I know myself. I know I'm not ready for a relationship. Anything I'm gonna do now is gonna be a fling, because I know there's an itch I'm scratching, and that's it. That decision is so controversial back home. It is. And to say it out loud too, it's like, how dare you take charge of your own sexual life. Journey and your love life, and you know, it's like, so it's interesting that it's evident that you had to, because I value that, because I think it's something that a lot of girls might not connect those dots, where it's like, it's okay to know that, okay, I'm not the marriage type right now, and I'm not saying I'm not ever going to be, but where I'm at right now, it's like, I have certain things that I need to fulfill in the short run,
Right.
but that doesn't mean I have to include the long run right now.
Yes.
But it's just knowing kujijua, just knowing
Exactly,
yourself. It's like it's okay to
Yeah.
know that all you need is a fling right now.
Yes,
you know?
and you know it's even how frequent those flings happen for me, because
Yeah.
it's one of those things where, so in the past, at the same time it speaks to that whole idea of being a lone wolf, right? In the past, I have probably had one or two after the 2-year situation, but then it died also, because it's almost like now if I want, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But then in the last
It's
2
not a
years,
habit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things that I even want that often, because when my schedule gets packed also, it's one of those things where like I can't have somebody blowing up my phone like that, you know? And so it's okay to take charge, but I made those decisions when I was here. Because back home, even when you're seen with a friend who is a boy, so who are his parents? So are you getting married? You know, and it's one of those things, either you're being condemned for it, that's very prostitute-like of you, or it's just like, are you marrying him? You know, there's never that middle ground.
There's no in between,
right?
Yeah.
And so I was able to make those decisions for myself being here. And also, the more my parents and my family has traveled, we have been exposed to different ways of thinking. So having those conversations with my parents have become much easier.
That's interesting. How far have you guys gone on that journey of discussing such things?
So with my mom, I tell her everything.
Okay.
Yeah. With my dad, I can't say, I tell him everything that he needs to know.
Yeah.
That he needs
that
to
makes
know.
sense, yeah.
You know, because at the same time, you know, when your parents are investing so much money in you when it comes to academia, you don't want to show that you're too distracted, right? So it's...
But that's a bad thing
too. It's part of life, right? It's part of life. So I would want them to be aware that, there's this, you know...
But you have to give them bits.
I'm just giving them... And actually, sometimes I end up telling them after it's over, but it's over. Yeah. But it's over, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, and so like... So now life in Canada, you're here now, and... How long have you been here so far? Since
5 years.
So 5 years.
Yeah.
And in that 5 years, what has been the biggest change for you? Because like you came in already having learned a certain set of Maria skills.
Yes.
What are the new Maria skills that you've learned now?
So the new set of skills for me, key is communication. Communication, and also not acting on assumption, right? You know those conversations that you have in your own head when you have not spoken to somebody yet, and so your reaction tends to be based on on my assumptions, and I haven't called this person, but then I'm thinking, but even if I call them, they'll refuse to answer my phone. They'll make me feel bad, and so you start getting angry about things that don't make sense.
Sorry to interrupt, but I feel very analyzed right now, just so you know. That's why I'm sitting back. I'm like, okay, chill out.
It happens to the best of us, and that's how some relationships, but they have ended, and not because I made assumptions in my head. And then I was like, this girl, she's just trying to play with my head right now. Even when I called her the other day, or maybe her reaction when I told her this, she wasn't as enthusiastic. And for me, enthusiasm is so important. So much so that if I tell you something and you're like, let me tell you, catch me telling you anything any other day, I will not invite you to anything, and I will almost try to purposely make you feel bad by inviting everybody else around you and isolating you. So you will not be enthusiastic by choice. You actually have to do it. So you see how far I've gone, and these are things that are happening in my own head. These are things that are happening in my... I could have just spoken to you and so. Well, how is it? And if you react badly, that's one thing. But for me to make up that whole story for myself, so I have learned how to wheel it in. I have learned how to wheel it in. Even sometimes it could be things. So, for example, in my family, between my siblings and I, again, because living with them also, there is no authority. So if somebody does something, I'm like, Mommy, Michael did this. No, now it's up to me and Michael to hash it out, or me and Naomi, or me and David, right? So it's one of those things where I can't assume the worst, and that's how I learned not to make assumptions with my family, because we live in a space together. If I start assuming the worst, we're going to have a very difficult relationship,
end bad,
right? Yeah, very, very difficult. And at the same time, financially, it doesn't make sense for all of us to live separately. So I was like, you know what? We're going to have to hash things out, and that's the key thing that I learned, how to communicate and actually get to the bottom of things, right? And if somebody is honestly being distasteful, also my reaction to that is important, right? I cannot I can no longer approach you with hostility. I will have to resolve that this person could be going through something. And 9 out of 10 people are going through things, right? And so, the people that I cut off, later on I heard from friends that they were going through things.
Something. Like, and then you're like, damn.
Oh my gosh, now I look like such an asshole. Yeah, because now it's like, now, had I known, I would not have been, as
that
crude.
Sucks.
Yeah. But, it is what it is. And so I have to, so I'm Catholic, so I have to go confess my sins. And then I also, at the same time, if I can make, amends with those people, then that's fine. But if I can't, then it is what it is. I have to learn from that situation and make sure the next person that I deal with, I'm not as hostile with them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Communication is huge for me too.
It's huge.
I mean, especially, and I was talking to someone yesterday and I was telling them, especially with a podcast.
Yes.
It's like before I started doing this podcast or my other podcast, I had to come in and kind of like see what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And in terms of like I had something I wanted to communicate. I could feel it. But then when I listened back, I was like, damn, even when I'm in a room alone, I can't communicate what I'm really feeling. It's like, why didn't it come out? I'm all alone. It's just me. It should be able to come out. And this was at a point, this was less than a year ago where I was doing this at a point when I thought I'm ready to communicate. So that's why I'm coming here to record. So it's like super important. Yeah.
I've realized for me, the reason why it used to come out is because I live with family. Again, right? When you surround yourself with people who genuinely love you and care for you, you will get called out on things that you wish they did not. Because one thing I've realized for myself is that when I'm going through something, I don't like hearing opinions.
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah. And sometimes, and that's why sometimes when your friends ask you, so how are you doing? So how are you really doing? Do you genuinely think I'm going to tell you how I'm doing? I cannot, because I'm in a tunnel. And right now I can't see that light.
Yeah.
Right? So if I tell you, I'm almost going to be adjusting the direction of my tunnel based on what you're saying, But and so with the thing with family, they will call you out at every point of that tunnel,
like it or not.
and you're just like, can you shut up? But then at the end of the day, and you start expressing to them things, because at the end of the day, you tell yourself, this is my family. Who are you going to tell? No one.
But you know what's interesting? I feel like that's you being a strong person, because I feel as though there's the potential for if being with family a lot for some people might have the opposite effect, where they don't know how to express themselves. So I feel like that's props to you for being able to do that, because I feel like when you're with family, at least how I see it, it's your comfort zone. It's where you don't get those questions.
Yeah.
And like maybe that's just a testament to how healthy your family is with communication.
It's huge for us.
So like, because in my experience, I don't think if I stayed with my family, I would be the total opposite. Right. I would not express anything. Also because I was the youngest. So it's like, it depends a lot, you know what I mean? So like in that case, I would go even deeper.
Into yourself. Yeah. So the reason why I ever since I was a child, ever since I can remember, I can't hold down anything. Because it'll have physical manifestations, right? It'll have, either I'll, get headaches or just be agitated. Like, I can't keep anything in my heart, right? It's just one of those things where I will explode, and you will all know that, you don't fuck up. And then I will move on, right? Yeah. And it helps me to move on. Yeah. My capacity to move on, sometimes irrespective of who I hurt, is important. I have to move on. Yeah. So, and if you're getting in my way, I will just have to haul you out, right? But I have to move on. So if that means, but now how I do it is important. If I come to you and like, listen, Nyex, we've had this, it's important that we talk. But if you're being aggressive, I'm still moving on, Yeah. And so communication has been key, and also at the same time, clarity. When demanding clarity, actually, to be more specific, when people are not clear with their intentions to be in a friendship or a relationship with you, that's something that makes me anxious, and I will not stand it. Okay. Right? It's one of those things where you need to be very specific exactly why. And it's very uncomfortable, don't get me wrong. Especially with a friend. It's like, see, we're just friends. Like, no, I mean, we are friends. Yeah. But at the same time, if you have an agenda, or you want to make someone feel bad using me, or you're not sure, especially when it comes to a relationship with somebody of the opposite gender or same gender or whatever, it's almost like you you're not sure what you want, but you're just there with me, and you're in this still
situation.
Nope.
Yeah.
I do not have the time because the truth is, with every person in my life, even my barista, I invest a certain amount of affection for that person. I walk into the coffee shop, he already knows what I want. I invest a certain amount of, affection for every single person I come across in this world. So that uncertainty for me is not acceptable. Because when I invest in you and then you decide to toss me away, right? Those are very hurtful things. And those are not things people can easily admit that they're hurt. Those are very hurtful things.
It is, yeah.
Right? And so I cannot allow myself to be in a situation like that, right? So you're going to have to be very forthcoming at the very beginning. Like, what do you want? Do you want us to be friends? Do you want us to be partners? What are you, tell me where your mind is at. But if you're like, I don't know. You not knowing is fine. But it just means I'm not going to invest that much. Yeah. I see, I'm like, hi. And that's all like that. I don't know that corner there. Yeah. But you can't not knowing over here, And so, And it's been hard to do that because, for the most part, I've taken in people who have hurt me incredibly. But I wouldn't change those experiences for anything in the world. Because it has toughened me. And at the same time, when, like I told you, with the bullying, when you start seeing it elsewhere, like, I've seen that before. Yeah. So that's pretty much how I've gotten through it.
Thank you for sharing, first of all. Like, those are not easy things to, like, open up about. And so, right now, how are you?
Right now, I am still as still can be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I will say that I am in a better position than I have been in the last 5 years. There's a lot of clarity. The dark clouds in my life have, faded away. And so we are aware of, I know what I want. I know where I'm going. And at the same time, there's certain parts where I don't know where I'm going. But that's also fine.
Yeah. At least you know that you don't know.
At least I know that I don't know. But I also, at the same time, most importantly, I know what I don't want.
That's very important.
So recently, my dad sent me an article about ambition and lack thereof, like lacking ambition in general. And he compared people like in the Bible, like Adonijah, and people like David.
Explain that. I don't know who Adonijah.
Okay, let's say Adonijah. So let's say, for example, someone like David. Everybody knows David in the Bible, right? And then thomebody like I don't know, Samuel in the Bible. Those are people who didn't know what they wanted out of life. But then God chose them and made kings out of them. He chose them and made prophets out of them. But there are people like Adonijah. I believe those were Solomon's brothers, if I'm not wrong. Okay. Those were military men. Those are people who knew what they wanted. Okay. Those are people who are primed to be king. But when King David died, who did God make king? Solomon, not his brothers. And they actually fought about it, but Solomon still won. Okay. So it's okay not to know what you want, but you know what you don't want. You don't want hostility, you don't want negativity, you don't want and not knowing, actually, it broadens your horizon. You know that, right? Because now it's almost like your mind space has that freedom to choose anything. When you're ambitious, there's a tunnel. You have that tunnel vision. You're pigeonholed into something. But now when you don't know, you're like, I could also do this, but I could also do this, but I could also do this. And
it frees yourself up.
Exactly.
What about like for the future? Like, are you a long-term thinker now? What are your plans in terms of moving forward?
So for me, the key thing is, I want to have influence. Now, a lot of people I've met, my peers, are very they're very interested in making money at this point, right? And I can understand that. Life is not easy, ABCD, and making money is important. Even I work from time, like I used to work last year, and then I also this way I work on occasion, but mostly doing school work. But I feel like if I place my focus on making money, like my creativity flies out the window.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And that's something that scares me, because my confidence comes from my creativity, right? The fact that I can think about that. And even sometimes when I tell my friends, they're like, and I'm like, yeah, I probably should copyright that now before you take it. And so the key thing for me is, irrespective of whatever lifestyle I lead, I could be in a studio or in a very small living arrangement. So long as I have that space to be creative, I want to carry my creativity into the future. Now, I'm very passionate about girls in STEM. So girls in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Nice.
And particularly girls in Africa. And in Africa, where you're being told there's the patriarchy has lied to our girls that they're not good in anything science related. They should stick to the arts. The arts are beautiful, by the way, absolutely beautiful. But at the same time, sciences are still something girls can do, right? And so when you come here, even when I go back home and then I tell my aunts, oh yeah, I took math, even kindergarten math was hard for me. And I was just like, the thing is, I feel like most of that was you being told it was hard for you.
Yes, it's all attitude,
it's
man.
all and that's how I changed mine. I had to change my attitude from, thinking I can't do it to, you know what? And it's not that I didn't fail next. I failed. I failed to the degree my parents thought, I was even placed on academic probation at some point. Yeah, that's how badly I failed, But then you bounce back, you keep bouncing back, And so it's one of those things where you have to tell somebody, even boys fail in maths. You know that? They also fail. Yeah, even, so you just keep going. But and then another thing, for me, I never placed barriers for myself in my head. As much as I was aware of the barriers that exist in life for women, black women, for being ABCD, those barriers never existed in my head. And I was aware, like for example at UBC, when I enter a math class, first you'll find there are 3-4 girls. Second, you'll find I'm the only black person in that class. So already institutionally, there are so many layers that, they're pretty much against you, right? But for me, it didn't look like that. It was just like, I'm a person who is in class trying to learn, this subject, right? That's it. And if it's difficult, it's not difficult because I'm black. It's not difficult because I'm a girl. It's difficult because it's bloody difficult, right? And I will get the help that I need. Barriers have never existed in my head, never, to any capacity. So much so that when I came to school, and of course you're being taught about, the layers that make up who I am and so on and so forth, and how they have acted as a barrier to other people. For example, there was a gentleman who told me at school that at UBC that, don't bother working too hard. You're a black woman. You will have, things coming at you. And and for me, and even at that age, I was 23, 24, I was like, now what does that mean? Because it's just like, I have never felt like my blackness is a barrier. The people around me are the barriers. And they are the barriers. My blackness is not an obstacle. And neither is me being a woman. The people around me are the obstacles. And if I can eliminate you out of my way, I will achieve whatever the hell I feel like, right? And so I'm glad I never had to feel inferior to anyone at any point. And sometimes even you end up feeling superior, like, now you're the ones who are supposed to threaten me, And I'm just like, please.
But then again, that's that conversation of balancing.
Yeah, exactly, balancing it, to some degree. But it's just like, you need to try harder to threaten me.
Damn, man. Oh, man. I think we've run out of time. But, thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared so far, man. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. That was great.
Man, I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. And thank you again. And for everyone who's been listening, thank you for joining us. Yeah, man. I guess stay strong. I don't know, man. Just whatever you can take from this conversation we've had. I really hope. Yeah, stay true. For sure.
Strength is built, but stay true to who you are.
I have nothing else to say.
Yeah.
Peace.
If you'd like to be a guest on the Represented Podcast, feel free to hit up at Represented Podcast on Instagram or email us at representedpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and for more Geek Happy Network shows like the Monster Slayer's Guide to Slaying Monsters or partner shows like the Jay and Tay Show and Book and Bitch, come give us a listen at geekhappynetwork.com or look for us on your favorite podcast app. And be sure to follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Geek Happy Network. This show is hosted and created by myself, Nyx, editing by Robert Mudhama, and myself, Video editing by Ras Rara and intro music by Mick Narciso.